It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Mission accomplished. Donald Trump leaves the UK after a state visit high on pageantry and low on political controversy. Mr. Trump and the Prime Minister hailed £250 billion worth of transatlantic deals. But there are signs of a coming fracture over the UK government's plans to recognise Palestinian statehood.
I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
Do you have some sympathy with him that he lost his job over historic links to Jeffrey Epstein? Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know him, actually. I had heard that, and I think maybe the Prime Minister would be better speaking of that.
Peter who? The President brushes off questions about the sacking of Lord Mandelson, despite recent contact in the Oval Office. After the pomp, today the personal touch from the Princess of Wales for the First Lady as the royal charm offensive continued. Plus, as the President calls for freedom of speech in the UK, Barack Obama leads the criticism to the axing of late-night host Jimmy Kimmel for comments about Charlie Kirk. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. Donald Trump's state visit came to a close this evening, with the president returning to Washington after 3 days of pageantry and political mutual admiration between him, the royal family and the Prime Minister. For Sir Keir Starmer, fresh from a series of political mishaps, including the sacking of his US ambassador just days before the visit began, it's perhaps hard to see how the trip could have gone better. The only mishap was a fault with the president's helicopter that forced an emergency landing on the way to Stansted Airport this evening. Before that, hundreds of billions of pounds in investment was announced. Public protest was mooted, and any major disagreements on serious matters of policy from Ukraine to Gaza were largely kept concealed from public view. Here's our political editor, Beth Rigby.
President hosted in a king's castle, Donald Trump relishing the rarity of this moment.
A great gentleman and a great king.
Full of appreciation for his host as he departed Windsor for the PM's country retreat of checkers and a political summit that risked being blown off course. A wave to reporters on the way in, the president in good spirits. Donald Trump has arrived at Chequers and the Prime Minister will be happy with how it went at Windsor Castle. There was pomp and pageantry and plenty of goodwill, but now it's down to the politics, and on that matter, it gets trickier. A bit more pageantry to kick off proceedings, bagpipes for a president of Scottish heritage as he was welcomed into the weekend residence of Sir Keir and Lady Starmer. The warmth between these two leaders plain to see. And the fruits of that on full display with the signing of a massive US-UK tech deal.
It's a great honour.
Bringing tens of billions of inward investment into the UK, powering the artificial intelligence revolution and new nuclear power.
What is the relationship all about when it comes down to brass tacks? It comes down to leaders, of course, leaders who respect each other, leaders who genuinely like each other. And just look at what we're achieving today together. The deals and investment that you're announcing today break all records.
The ties between our countries are priceless, and it's really an inheritance. It's a beautiful inheritance. Today we're making those ties closer than ever before.
Yet another military display in a visit peppered with tricky manoeuvres. The diplomatic business of this trip needing careful navigation when it comes to wars on two fronts, Gaza and Ukraine, and the potential rupture over the UK's decision to recognise the state of Palestine.
The situation in Gaza is intolerable. The hostages have been held for a very, very long time, and they must be freed. And we need aid to get into Gaza at speed. And so it's within that context that the question of recognition needs to be seen.
So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
But there is broad agreement on Hamas.
Let me be really clear about Hamas. They're a terrorist organisation who can have no part in any future governance in Palestine. And
That's good.
what happened on October the 7th was the worst attack since the Holocaust.
And on Russia, the president critical of Putin.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down.
Mr. President, if I may, the King praised your personal commitment last night to finding solutions to the world's most intractable conflicts. You have invested much of your time and effort in Ukraine, but even as you seek to broker a deal, President Putin is escalating the war. He's firing drones into NATO airspace. You say he has let you down. Was it a mistake to invite him to Alaska? Do you regret it?
No.
And is it time to squeeze him, sir, and scare him and impose sanctions?
Very simply, if the price of oil comes down, Putin's going to drop out. He's going to have no choice. He's going to drop out of that war. If the oil price comes down, very simply, Russia will settle. And the oil price is way down. You know, we got it way down.
But there was one issue overhanging this media conference missing until the end. The elephant in the room, Lord Mandelson, he is no longer the ambassador. Do you have some sympathy with him that he lost his job over historic links to Jeffrey Epstein? Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know him, actually. I had heard that, and I think maybe the Prime Minister would be better speaking of that. That was a choice that he made, and I don't know. What is your answer to that?
Well, I mean, it's very straightforward. Some information came to light last week which wasn't available when he was appointed, and I made a decision about it, and that's very clear.
A difficult issue dodged in a state visit where these leaders were keen to stay in line. President Trump there is leaving the UK after this historic state visit, and I think number 10 will take it all as a win. Billions of dollars of investment into the UK economy, a strengthened special relationship, and avoiding any diplomatic blow-ups on the matters of Peter Mandelson or Gaza. So this then became a moment of respite for the Prime Minister, but he still faces real domestic woes here at home. But this visit has at least given Keir Starmer a much-needed lift after some of the most difficult weeks of his premiership. His team hopes he can use this momentum to turn his government's fortunes around, but it's a very long journey ahead. Beth Rigby, Sky News Chequers.
Well, as we heard in Beth's report, the US President batted away questions about the sacking of Lord Mandelson as US Ambassador for his connections to Jeffrey Epstein, claiming not to know who he was. All the more strange, given that he had this encounter only a few months ago.
As the Prime Minister has said, just shows what two countries who trust each other, who are confident in each other and are familiar with each other can do, not just for ourselves, but for those, the rest of the world, who need to benefit from a bigger and better international trading system.
Thank you very much. It was beautifully stated. What a beautiful accent. I'd like to have that accent. Thank you.
My mother would be proud.
And in a moment, we'll speak to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, in Downing Street. But first, our US correspondent, Mark Stone, is in Windsor for us this evening. And Mark, the Mandelson sacking was just one of the pitfalls facing the Prime Minister and the President today. What's your view on how the President dodged the question?
Well, he dodged that question in a very neat way. I mean, that old way of doing it, I don't know who you're talking about. I never knew him. I mean, clearly he knew him. And it was a bit of a hospital pass over to Keir Starmer, who was then left to pick up the pieces. It was one moment of 2 days which were fascinating and had, I guess, so many outcomes. But the takeaways for me, the first one is that both sides will be very happy with how this went. I spoke to Susie Wiles, who's Donald Trump's chief of staff, kind of the controller of the White House machine, if you like, over the course of today. And she said, that they loved it, that Donald Trump loved every part of it, especially the castle, and that the best bit for the president was the dinner last night. And I've spoken to British diplomatic sources this evening who are also very, very pleased with this. Now, obviously, they would be. They organised it. But these are diplomatic sources, not sources within the government, and so not politically aligned. So they're independent in that sense. And they, too, feel that this has gone well. One said to me that this is very good news after a torrid couple of weeks for the Prime Minister. Beyond that, though, I think what's really interesting is that the relationship between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer, despite the fact that they are worlds apart politically, really does seem to be very close. We thought it was close. We've heard Donald Trump talking about it before, how he likes Keir Starmer as a person, but we saw it again today. Very close indeed. And I think we've got to a place, maybe, the British will certainly think this, where they can disagree on big issues, the Brits can disagree with the Americans on big issues without risking irritating Trump and potentially being punished by Trump with things like tariffs. And I think a case in point is Palestine. The British decision to recognise Palestine as a state, which they will do in New York next week. That was brought up today, and the two sides appeared just to agree to disagree. Now, with Trump, who is so unpredictable, that, I think, is a diplomatic win for the UK, that they can feel comfortable in disagreeing with this unpredictable president.
OK, Mark, thank you for your analysis there. Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is in Downing Street for us tonight. And John, many warm words for the Prime Minister from President Trump, but not so much for the London Mayor this evening on Air Force One.
Well, on Air Force One, the President, on his way back to the United States, has really attacked Sir Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor. Old foes they are. They've criticised each other. In the days leading up to this visit, the Mayor attacked Mr Trump over his views on peddling hate and stuff like that, he said, and also accusing the Israelis of genocide. Now, hitting back on the plane, Mr Trump has said, I didn't want him there. I asked that he not be there. I think the London Mayor is among the worst mayors in the world, and we have some bad ones. He went on to say he's done a terrible job. Crime in London's through the roof. The Mayor of London has done a terrible job on immigration. He's a disaster. And he pressed on this. He said, I asked that he not be there. He wanted to be there. I'd not liked him for a long time. I have a certain pride in London and the UK. So, undiplomatic language on when he's on his way back to America. But, of course, he was very deft in his answering of questions. Just a postscript on that Peter Mandelson question. I can tell you, Gillian, that what Peter Mandelson has claimed during his time as ambassador, he said that when he first walked into the Oval Office, the President said to him, God, you're a good-looking fellow, aren't you? Well, not known for his modesty, Peter Mandelson. But from the Prime Minister, that news conference was as controlled as the British government could make it. The Prime Minister couldn't wait to get out of the room, and he answered the Mandelson question very quickly, and he kept the number of questions pretty short. You'll know that every time the President does a news conference, it often goes on for a long time and lots of questions. That didn't happen at Chequers, so that was pretty well controlled. On Palestine, yes, they agreed to differ. But, of course, in the next few days, we are expecting the Prime Minister and the British government to confirm that decision, controversial, to recognise the Palestinian state. Tories claim it's a sop to Labour backbenchers, it's gesture politics and so on. Appeasement is a word that the Conservatives have used. Now, what struck me about this summit, this summit today, the heavy business focus. Lots of meetings with top business people, tech bros yesterday, that event in what looked like a marquee at Chequers. The Chancellor was there, Peter Kyle, the new business secretary, has been talking tonight, and the Prime Minister gushing about the billions of pounds of investment. So the Prime Minister will want to sell this as a great deal for British business and British jobs, as he said on numerous occasions. But of course, the diplomatic front, there are areas where they disagree. But the body language, the relationship between the two, well, it's probably not quite true to say it couldn't be better. It could if they agreed on things like Palestine and so on. But it proves yet again, as has happened many times in history, a Labour Prime Minister can get on well with a Republican president and vice versa. There were those who, when the President Trump was elected, thought, oh, goodness, this is going to be a nightmare for Sir Keir Starmer. It's not a nightmare. It could be better on tariffs and some other issues, but the Prime Minister will be very satisfied. But there are more rows ahead. There's bound to be more controversy when that decision is announced on Palestine over the next few days. Cynics will say the British government is simply waiting till President Trump was on the plane. Well, that may be true. It was a short visit and he's gone now, but we can expect something, probably at some point over the weekend, confirmation of that decision to recognise Palestine, bitterly criticised by the Conservatives here, but of course it's in line with France and Australia and some other countries as well. And of course the whole Middle East issue is one of great controversy. The Prime Minister is trying to edge the President towards the British ways of thinking, but there's no sign of that happening, although it was all very polite and good-natured at the news conference, and no harsh words until he got on the plane and attacked Sadiq Khan.
Indeed. John, thank you very much. Well, even though today was more about politics than pageantry, there was still further occasion for the royals to indulge in some more delicate diplomacy as the Queen and the Princess of Wales entertained the First Lady at Windsor Castle. Here's our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills.
It's these two women on this state visit that the world can't get enough of. An unnecessary distraction? Not at all. Many would say a vital part of the softer side of our diplomacy.
Wow, look at that. And what's your name?
As soon as the First Lady stepped off the helicopter, that hat was being talked about on all the social channels. Along with the Princess of Wales, a really important part of the welcome party. At the state banquet, the President practically giddy about Kate sitting next to him, even though that always happens with a male head of state.
Melania and I are delighted to visit again with Prince William and to see Her Royal Highness, Princess Catherine, so radiant and so healthy, so beautiful. It's really a great honor. Thank you.
We have to talk about the outfits. Whether you like them or not, it is the ultimate power dressing, both giving American and British designers significant exposure.
There probably aren't that many people that the First Lady can relate to in the same way, and I suspect that one frustration she shares with the royal women is that often the way she looks overshadows her work, which is why with the President dispatched off to Chequers, it was really important for her to have her own programme of engagements.
Camilla showing off Queen Mary's doll's house and the library at Windsor to try and instead get us talking about their support for young people and education.
You want to tell me what you're doing?
But Camilla isn't maybe as popular back in America.
You want to play the parachute? Yes. Okay, ready?
So this is what the White House was waiting for. Melania, Kate and some scouts, and a message from both about children, nature and mental health.
The great thing to watch today was to see the Princess, our joint president, getting stuck in, making the artwork. At one point she was on the floor with the young people, creating these, amazing bits of art using paints and using glue and using leaves and twigs and whatever else we found out here. And a similar thing for the First Lady as well.
If you don't have your head stuck in the politics, these are probably the pictures of the day.
Congratulations.
Excellent job.
We're told the children were given honey from the White House to go with biscuits made with honey from Kate's back garden in Norfolk. A final sweetener, you could say, in what has been the ultimate display of soft power. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News, at Windsor Castle.
Well, today, President Trump spoke about the importance of protecting free speech in the UK. But he returns to the US with Hollywood stars and leading politicians criticising the suspension of late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. He was taken off air over comments made about the shooting of right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk. Mr. Trump said that Kimmel was fired for lack of talent. Former President Barack Obama has spoken out, saying media companies must not capitulate to government coercion. Here's our US correspondent, David Blevins.
Jimmy Kimmel! For 2 decades, he's been part of America's late-night routine.
Thank you for being here.
But Jimmy Kimmel is off the air over comments about the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
The MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
ABC said those words were deemed offensive and insensitive at a critical time in the national political discourse.
Jimmy Kimmel stays, Trump must go.
And pulled the show from the schedule.
Jimmy Kimmel stays, Trump must go.
He is an Emmy-winning talk show host, famous for political satire, often directed at the US president.
I don't necessarily feel like I'm defending democracy, but I do feel like I'm giving this guy a little poke.
Donald Trump congratulating the network for pulling the plug on him.
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Many are drawing comparisons with Stephen Colbert, whose CBS show will end in June. Democrats accusing the Trump administration of waging war on free speech.
One of the great hallmarks of our country is free speech, whether you agree or disagree. And this administration is trying to snuff it out. They don't want people to even speak when they don't like what they say. That is the road to autocracy.
Brendan Carr, the Trump-appointed chair of regulators, had warned of financial penalties, acknowledging the president's battle with traditional media.
He smashed the facade that they get to control what we say, what we think, the narrative around events. And we're seeing a lot of consequences that are flowing from President Trump doing that.
Jimmy Kimmel has exited the stage and is keeping a low profile for now. But he's never lost for words for very long. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
A migrant who illegally crossed the Channel has been sent back to France as part of the UK-France one-in, one-out returns agreement for the first time. More of these returns are expected to take place over the coming days, along with ongoing legal challenges. The latest of these challenges was heard this evening. And our correspondent Molly Malone joins me live now from outside the Home Office. And Molly, the government facing an uphill struggle to get this scheme up and running, but some success today.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's fair to say there would have been a pretty big sigh of relief here at the Home Office this morning and across government too, as we heard that first plane landed in Paris, removing an Indian national, a man that had come over on a small boat to the UK over the summer. The first of that one-in, one-out deportation scheme that we'd agreed with France in July essentially means that the UK can send back people that have illegally tried to claim asylum, coming over on a small boat in exchange for us accepting as many migrants back over from France who might have a valid or potentially legal claim. The Home Secretary this morning saying that it's the first step in this policy. She knows, though, that really it is only the first step, because often with this policy come political moments of peace, if you like, but soon after moments of political jeopardy and stumbling blocks. And we saw the latest iteration of that at the High Court this afternoon, as barristers for an Eritrean man that had come over on a small boat to the UK also over the summer tried to argue that he was a victim of human trafficking and that his case couldn't sufficiently or properly be heard in France. The judge, though, disagreeing, saying that it was of a public interest, in his words, that his deportation as part of this scheme should go ahead as scheduled at 6:15 tomorrow morning. Look, so moments of slight success with this policy today, if you like, for the government. They all know, though, that this isn't the end of the road. The Keir Starmer Starmer, the Prime Minister, today at Chequers in that news conference, saying that there is really no silver bullet when it comes to migration policy. Donald Trump saying that he should look to use the military to help boost the UK's borders. So while we had small signs of success for their policy today, we know that 31,000 people already this year have come over on small boats, and there's likely to be only a small fraction of them perhaps, but further moments of jeopardy and further challenges in the courts.
Molly, thank you. A gunman has killed 2 Israeli soldiers at an Israeli-run border crossing between the occupied West Bank and Jordan. Jordan's foreign ministry said the gunman was an aid delivery driver. He was shot dead at the scene. Israel has halted the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza from Jordan while an investigation takes place. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of assisting the Russian intelligence service. 2 men, aged 41 and 46, as well as a 35-year-old woman, were detained in Essex. The Metropolitan Police says the arrests are part of a counter-terrorism investigation. The author Sally Rooney says she's been told she can no longer enter the UK without potentially facing arrest. The Irish author recently pledged her book royalties to the proscribed group Palestine Action, meaning she's at risk of committing a terror offence under UK law. The 34-year-old won a Sky Arts Award for her latest novel, Intermezzo, but was unable to attend the ceremony on Tuesday in London for fear of arrest. The Bank of England has held interest rates at 4%, with its governor warning the UK is not yet out of the woods over inflation. But it was a decision on so-called quantitative easing that might have been more profound consequences for the UK economy and taxpayers. To explain, here's our economics and data editor, Ed Conway.
Now, normally when we're talking about the Bank of England, we're talking about this, interest rates. That's the main thing that they're famous for, isn't it? And this is what's happened to interest rates in recent years. They were kind of rock bottom through this period. That was a financial crisis there. You've got the referendum, you've got COVID, and they've been coming up. And they went up to kind of 5.25%, but they've come down now. And so 4% is where they are. And the bank just recently said, look, we're leaving them at 4%. But that's not the thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about what's known, this is a technical term, but bear with me, it's known as quantitative easing. And over the period of financial crisis, when those rates were at rock bottom, the bank decided it needed to do something else to pump money out into the economy to kind of prevent a terrible crisis from happening. And it did this thing where it basically created money, so electronically printing money, and started pumping it out there by buying assets. So you're pumping money out into the economy by buying a lot of government bonds. And the amount of government bonds, and this is why this is critical, came to an extraordinary total. So £895 billion. It's a lot of money, basically. It's a lot of money. And here's what's happening at the moment. They are starting to reverse that. So they're selling off these assets out there into the market, selling bonds that they previously built up. And this is potentially having an impact. If we just kind of have a look at some of these bonds we're talking about, and not necessarily a good impact from the Bank of England's kind of balance sheet perspective. Here's the bond that they did buy. It was a 2061 gilt, which is just another word for UK government debt. It bought it at £101, and look at what happened afterwards. Then it sold it round about over here at £28. So 101, £28. Doesn't take financial expertise to work out that is a very big loss. It's a 73% loss. And now imagine that happening across the bank's portfolio, and you're getting a sense of a bit of an issue here, which is that all of the central banks have basically been doing a similar thing across the world. The US Federal Reserve has been losing a bit of money, is slated to lose money potentially on its engagement in QE. Same thing in the Eurozone for the European Central Bank. But the Bank of England is projected to lose even more than the rest in terms of its QE programme. You're talking about £134 billion. And when you remember that Rachel Reeves is facing a black hole of maybe £20 billion, that's a lot of money. And all of which is to say, the bank has just decided that it's slightly slowing that programme of selling off the bonds. So all this is showing you in each year is how much it's been selling off, 100, 100 and 100 in previous years. This year, this coming year, it says the total is going to be £70 billion in total. Perhaps acknowledging the fact that this programme it's been a bit more controversial than it might have expected. Now to a mixed night for the English sides who kicked off their Champions League campaigns tonight.
Marcus Rashford scored twice on his return to England as Barcelona won 2-1 at Newcastle. They were the on-loan Manchester United striker's first goals for the Spanish club. Only one other English player in Champions League history has scored twice for a non-English team. That was Harry Kane for Bayern Munich last night. Erling Haaland became the fastest ever player to reach 50 Champions League goals, opening the scoring in Manchester City's 2-0 win against Napoli. Jeremy Doku got the other. Haaland reached the landmark in 49 appearances, 13 fewer than it took Ruud van Nistelrooy to set the record. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the editor of The Courier in Dundee, David Clegg, and the journalist and broadcaster, Daisy McAndrew. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Telegraph, its headline, "Send in military to stop boats." The words of Donald Trump. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.